And the digestive do too. So as far as respiratory system, this is the nasal cavity. External nares, internal nares, opening to the eustachian tube. What are these called?
Conky.
Conky, okay, so inferior, middle, and superior nasal conky. And that's separated from the oral cavity by the hard palate, the soft palate, and that little thing that hangs down the back of your throat called the uvula. So that allows you to breathe and eat at the same time. Okay, which a lot of animals don't have to choose much as we do. Also, we have the nasopharynx here, oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. This is the tongue. Okay. We also have the what gland here?
Parotid.
Parotid gland, and underneath would be
Submandibular.
Submandibular, and there's another skull someplace that shows sublingual. Okay. Now, when you swallow, what happens is that the soft palate and uvula move up to close off the opening to the nasal cavity, and this cartilage goes down. Which cartilage would this be?
Epiglottis.
Epiglottis, okay. Back here is the esophagus. This is the larynx, and on the way to the...
Yeah. Where is the junction between the esophagus and the laryngeal pharynx? At what point borders that?
The laryngeal pharynx?
Laryngeal pharynx.
Laryngeal pharynx.
The border between the esophagus and...
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I don't think it shows very well here. This is the on the way to the esophagus. This is on the way to the larynx. Okay. But the laryngopharynx, it sort of includes both, it looks like, from the pictures and the way they describe it.
Yeah, it was kind of confusing in the book where it
I think
talked about
it is.
inferior border.
Yeah, I don't like it. The superior border would be right where the epiglottis is.
Oh, the esophagus, but the laryngeal pharynx extends below the level of the epiglottis?
The laryngeal pharynx, yes, it does.
Okay.
And it kind of, I think, is confusing a little bit.
And so that would go to the carotid cartilage, because below that it
Carotid cartilage?
Well, it begins with C.
Cricoid cartilage. I don't know the carotid cartilage. The
You're wrong, it begins with C. So that is the border between the laryngeal pharynx and the trachea.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is the larynx here too. It's kind of weird because it looks like it's kind of both combined.
Okay.
Yeah. This is the front of it. This is the back of it. So I would be very careful what I label myself.
Okay.
I'd be careful.
Because you would hate to have to argue on the last day, right?
Yes, I know.
Okay.
Because I think it's ambiguous a little bit myself.
Okay.
Okay, hit the stomach. I mean the stomach at the tongue.
The stomach of the mouth.
Tongue, okay.
Lingua.
Just a little stomach tight.
Yeah. Okay, and then here we have, these just show the cartilage, not the soft tissue, versus the hyoid bone. This is the thyroid cartilage with the prominence called the Adam's apple. This is the epiglottis. This is the cricoid cartilage.
Cricoid.
Which goes all the way around. It's the base for all the other cartilages, basically. And below it is a major landmark for a tracheostomy. This would be your arytenoid cartilage. And if you notice, they got ripped here, I see. True vocal cords are here. It got ripped. So just going to have a little laryngitis, I think. It's attached in front to the thyroid cartilage and behind to the arytenoid cartilage. And this must be the corniculate cartilages, and they don't show the cleaning of one. And this is the trachea, of course, with its C-shaped rings of cartilage. And behind it is the esophagus, which does not have cartilage. Okay, why don't we have that one next?
This one?
Yeah.
In the lung? Is this doing respiratory system?
No, not doing this, not long.
No.
You didn't bring any more respiratory stuff in.
You want your boil?
If you, I mean, there's not much. You can go get that respiratory model. There's no more respiratory here right now that I see. You can get some more later if you want. Okay, this is the model of the GI tract. The first part is the esophagus. How can I tell that?
Stratified squamous?
Stratified squamous, because food is still kind of chunky. The starch out in the mouth is food, and it becomes a bolus of food. It helps you to swallow it. And it's going to be stratified squamous in your mouth, and in your pharynx, oropharynx, and down here in your esophagus. There's no new digestion or absorption occurring in the esophagus. Maybe there's some leftovers from the mouth or something like that. And fluid is moved through here by very strong peristaltic waves. Suppose you can be on your head and still swallow. But there's no digestion, and no new digestion, no absorption. Now there's a big change in the tissue when we go from the esophagus to the stomach. And I put that up on the microscope, so you should recognize that. This is stratified squamous. What is this?
Simple columnar.
And it stays simple columnar all the way to the end of the digestive tract. And where it switches back to the very end
Stratified
to
squamous.
stratified squamous, because now again we have chunky stuff again. Okay.
Chunky stuff. Hopefully it's soft.
Here at Tombolas, when it reaches the stomach, it changes because it gets kind of creamy. You've all seen what vomit looks like, I think. So that's called chyme.
Chyme.
So stratified squamous changes to simple columnar. Also, there's another change in the stomach. What else has changed?
3 layers.
3 layers to the muscularis. Okay, an extra inner oblique layer.
Oblique.
So we have lots of churning going on there and mixing going on. And there's a lot of ways of protecting the stomach, which you should know about, like mucus, regular mucus, alkaline mucus, pepsinogen is secreted to the pepsin, rapid turnover, what did I leave out? Tight junctions.
Tight junction.
And lots of hydrochloric acid here, which is going to help denature the proteins and also activates pepsinogen to pepsin. And there's a hormone here called gastrin that promotes all the activities of the stomach. It's under what control? What part of the nervous system? Parasympathetic. More specifically, the vagus nerve. Okay. This is sort of a C-shaped organ, and it has rugal folds. Okay. So it can enlarge if necessary to eat a lot. We start at the. There's 2 sphincters, by the way, on the esophagus, an upper and a lower one. It's a bit of the stomach. Then we have a C-shaped stomach. That's sort of greater curvature of the stomach. And this is connected to the liver by the what membrane?
The lesser lesser omentum.
That's omentum, okay. Which we cut on our cadaver, so you can see behind it is a retroperitoneal organ called the pancreas. Okay. Now, leaving the stomach, the food's going to be there for a while. Not much absorption here, maybe a little aspirin, a little bit of alcohol, but in general, not much. Okay. But it is important for breakdown of proteins. What happened in the mouth, though?
Amylase.
Carbohydrates and a little lipid, I think.
Amylase.
Yeah, salivary amylase, a little lipase. Okay. Now, let's move from here through the, what is the sphincter?
Pyloric.
Sphincter, okay, to the small intestine. This is where most of the activity is, in the small intestine, okay? This is where we're going to have most of the absorption and most of the digestion. Digestion first, of course, absorption second. Okay. Now, there are cells here in the small intestine that help with digestion, but a lot of the enzymes that are involved in digestion come from what organ?
Pancreas.
It digests just about everything.
Nucleic acid.
Everything can be digested in us, basically. So it has proteases, amylases, lipases, nucleases. Also, we're getting some secretion from what other organ? The gallbladder. And it gets its from the bile from the liver, okay? And it helps.
Fats.
It's not with. It doesn't digest any lipids.
Emulsifies fat.
It breaks big lipid globules into smaller lipid globules to increase the surface area, so that the enzymes can work on it. Okay. Now, since there's so much absorption going here, there's a lot of modifications to help with absorption. So, what are some of those modifications? This is another question on my extra credit. Villi, microvilli, and biggest? Circular folds.
Circular folds.
Okay. Okay. Circular folds, also called fici circularis. Fici circularis, okay. And they make a food kind of spiral down the small intestine. And then on top of the folds, and you should be able to see the folds on the cadavers. We've opened up some of them. You can see actually see the folds there. They're pretty obvious. Then we have villi, the finger-like projections. And then each villus has all these simple columnar cells going around, and on top of each cell are the microvilli, which you can't see. The villi you can see just barely, because they're about half to 1 millimeter high. So those 3 modifications, besides just being very long, it has these modifications to the wall that make it obvious. I mean, that increase surface area about 600-fold. Okay. And we're back to 2 layers to the muscularis again. Okay. Now, we have a lot of mixing and churning going on here. In the small intestine, we move things along again by peristalsis. We also have segmentation, which it's like that, with a muscle. So you're not really moving things along, you're more mixing things up. Some of the brush border enzymes of the small intestine get mixed in there, they break off, and they help digest things too. Now, where do the pancreatic enzymes and bile enter the small intestine? Which part? Duodenum. Okay. So it's very short, 10 inches long or so, but that's where a lot of things enter, including also bicarbonate ion. Why is that important?
Neutralize the acid.
From the stomach. Okay, yeah, you got to neutralize those acids. And by the way, the stomach has why doesn't it digest? I told you all the reason why it doesn't digest itself. What has to do with ulcers mainly that we know now? H. pylori. Helicobacter pylori. Okay, so you can cure that with antibiotics, which is lovely, versus having to go on a special diet. You know, like my stepfather had to, my guardian father had to do for many decades, I think. Okay. Okay, so here's where we have most of the absorption. A lot of things are, we don't have a villus here, but we saw the villi, right? And they look cuboidal. They should be columnar cells going around, and you can see lots of capillaries inside. A lot of things are actively transported into the villus, and then they just move into the bloodstream by diffusion. Some things move into the villi and go into lacteals, like fat-soluble fats and fat-soluble vitamins, although some of the fats go into the blood. Now, the blood from the capillaries, where's that going to go next? Yes, have you forgotten hepatic portal vein? Some of you have, I think.
Not yet.
Okay.
No, Thursday, that's
And what about the fat? The fat's going from the lacteal go where?
They go through into the cysternocyle.
Cysternocyle. Okay, it's called chyle.
Another thing that came this year.
Yeah, gotta watch out. Chyle versus chyme.
Kyle versus Kyle.
Yeah. Now, what are the different parts of the small intestine? First one is the duodenum.
Ileum.
And ileum. Most of the absorptions are actually in the
Jejunum.
Okay. When we get to the ileum, okay, it's going to, what's left over is going to move from the small intestine to the large intestine through what? Ileocecal valve. Now, I'll help you remember the last part of the small intestine is the ileum. The first part of the large intestine
Cecum.
is the cecum. Okay. Our large intestine and colon mean the same thing? No. The colon is just part of the large intestine. So the cecum is that pouchy part at the beginning, and hanging off that is that doodad called the appendix.
Appendix. Doodad.
Scientific term.
Yeah. And lymphatic tissue. So from the cecum we go to the ascending colon, which makes a turn at the hepatic flexure or right colic flexure, comes across as the
Transverse colon.
makes a turn at the
Left.
flexure,
Descending.
right or left colic flexure, descending colon,
Sigmoid.
sigmoid colon, rectum,
Anus.
anal canal, anus. What did you say?
And they killed it.
What?
It's okay, we're all a little slow at times, have to do
Okay.
You haven't seen the medical terminology and layman terminology thing?
No.
Oh,
Which one? There's a bunch. I've seen a bunch of